ready?
Yeah, it's going.
Oh, it's going. Okay, all right.
Give me a break, guys. I know on the video.
All right, so we have Photoshop turned on. Hi, people who are sick. We have Photoshop turned on, and we have our drawing in here already cleaned up. So we've watched like Lydia, we've watched the 1.5-hour long marathon video, and we've cleaned our drawing up. So what we have is a layer right here, and I'm just gonna name it, double click, name it drawing, okay, base layer, all right. And then just for the purposes of this video, you do not need to do a layer that is red, although you might find that it's helpful. So I've done layer, add a new layer here, and then I just painted it red. And that's on top of that, okay? Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move this layer underneath this. Now, the only reason why I have this layer is just so that you guys can see when we've selected something, when we haven't selected something. You do not need to have a red layer in order to do that. It'll show up as a checkerboard, or it'll show up as black when you select something. Okay, so now, if I use like a rectangular marquee and I cut something out, right? If I click and hold and I go across the drawing, you'll see this rectangular kind of dash line that's kind of dancing, all right? If I hit Control X, which is cut, it'll cut that information out of the file. And then I can hit Control V and it'll paste it in again. And now they're on two separate layers. You can see it's pasted this new information on this layer, and I can grab it and move it around, all right? It's separated those two pieces from each other. What I've effectively done is taken a knife and cut it out and made it into, what was one piece of paper is now two pieces of paper, all right? I can't really join them back together. I can, but there's always gonna be an error where they came together. Usually because I'm splitting a couple of pixels in half. And since it doesn't like doing that, it kind of guesses and it doesn't quite, it won't zip them back together exactly the way they need to go. Okay, now I'm gonna back up. So let me open my history bar, and I'm gonna have my history bar here. I'm just gonna back up.
We don't have to make
You don't have to do the color layer. The reason why I'm doing it is just to make it very vivid to you when I've removed something, right? So if I turn that color layer off and I cut this out, Control X, you're gonna see it's gonna get a checkerboard. But the problem with the checkerboard is that sometimes it's hard to see where the exact edge of that checkerboard is. So just making it a really loud color makes it stand out. Okay. So now we're going to use the Magic Wand tool, which is up here in the corner, and you can see as I hover over it, you can see this letter. The letter right here says W, which means that's the shortcut to it. Now, for a lot of you guys, the Magic Wand tool has become more and more unpopular because of how easy it is to misuse. But the reason why we keep using it is because it's really handy. Anybody ever use cruise control in their car? It's very handy when you're on a highway that's not busy. As soon as you're on the Schuylkill Expressway, no. Anybody ever accidentally engage cruise control while you're just like driving on a 45-mile-an-hour road? Not handy, right? So like, it's very useful in certain scenarios. The Magic Wand tool is like this, okay? I say it's a Spider-Man tool, all right? It has a lot of power, but with great power comes great responsibility. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is just show you the way that most people use the Magic Wand tool, and we're gonna talk about why it's a mistake. So the way that the Magic Wand tool works is that it selects the pixel that you're selecting, and any pixel next to it that is the same color or very close to that color, and then it spreads. So if I click on this right here, it selects this piece of white, and since this piece of white is connected, and I could draw an unbroken line to all these other pieces of white, that's what I'll get. And if I hit Control X, oh, let's turn on the red layer so you can see it. If I hit Control X, it cuts it out like that, okay? Now you can see that there's some problems here. Number one, check this out. It's not always perfect. This should connect, and it doesn't. Also, it's not gonna connect to closed shapes. But even worse, is it does this messy job of doing it over here. Do you see how this is just this is just trash, yeah. Right? The other thing is, it's easy to do, and so lots of people do it and then don't go any further than this. And so it immediately betrays to somebody who's looking at your drawing that you took the easiest way out. And basically, when I see people using this in a portfolio, I'm like, oh, I don't need to look any further. I know that they're not really, they don't care about the drawing. They're just doing whatever's quick, right? It's kind of a canary in the coal mine test to show like how much are you paying attention, how much do you care about what your drawing looks like. Now, oftentimes it's used because of desperation. So we're like, okay, I need to clean this up. So I'm gonna grab this and cut it out. I'm gonna grab this and cut it out. I'm gonna grab this and cut it out. And it seems to be working nice, right? But you can see that really quickly, I'm gonna need to grab this piece and cut it out, and then grab this piece and cut it out, and see how it's not doing a complete job? Also, let's just say we wanted to grab all of the white space in this drawing. That's a lot of work. Now, I could make my life easier by holding down Shift, and when I hold down Shift, can you see the little plus button that goes there? So I can add stuff together and take all that at once. But again, there's still a lot of work to be done. Let me zoom in and show you guys even more problems that it has though. Hang on. All right, so we're gonna zoom in here. And when I hit, now look at this little dancing line. You see this little dancing line? You see how it's selecting white, light gray, and also some dark gray? So when I cut that out, let me back up, then cut it out, back up, cut it out. It's actually like, it's making a guess, but it's not getting a super, it's not getting a super accurate cut. It's just like, it's a dumb algorithm. So what we don't want to do is kind of just cut and kind of continually repaste. So I'm going to back up. I'm going to back up in my selection, in my history here. So that's what we don't want to do. This is how I'll see it used most of the time by students. They'll see an area of gray or purple, Jillian, like you had. They'll select it and they'll cut it out. And then they'll just keep cutting it out. And then that's what will go in their portfolio. And what you're gonna see is all this junk around the edges, and it actually erodes the drawing that you have. So let's not do that. The reason why I wanted to show you guys that is because it's what everybody who starts with Magic Wand eventually does. Even if you don't want to do it, you're gonna find yourself in a moment where you have no time and you're making a rush and you do that and it looks like crap, okay? So now that I've teased you with the power, and this is not the best way to teach people how to do stuff, is to teach them like how to stay on the road by driving off the road to begin with, okay? But if you've ever driven with ABS brakes, a really good way to learn how to use ABS brakes is you go out into the parking lot the first time it's icy. A place that's safe, and you speed up, and then you slam on the brakes so you understand what it feels like to have the ABS brakes working. They're anti-skid. Everybody does. If you have a car that's built after like 1993, you have ABS brakes. All right, so here's the powerful way. Here's the powerful way to use the Magic Wand tool. It's to right click. When you right click, it brings up this menu. And this menu allows you much more control over the algorithm. And what we're gonna select is color range, all right? So again, Magic Wand tool, right click, color range. Don't try to follow along yet, just watch here. Okay, now, when we select color range, it brings up this menu. This is why I want you guys to pay attention here because there's some nuance here, all right? It's gonna give you a preview, but this preview image is always tiny. So you're gonna have to guess and check, and you're gonna have to try it a couple times and back up a few times. And every drawing is a little bit different. Even if it's two drawings that you scanned or took pictures of right next to each other, they're gonna be a little bit different. So the fuzziness, remember how I was telling you that kind of guesses how much gray it wants to include? The fuzziness says include more or include less. So if I do 0 fuzziness, you're gonna see it's only doing a color range of precisely the pixels that are the exact color of the one that I selected. If I increase the fuzziness, do you guys see how it starts to include more and more and more and more and more? Now, honestly, I can't tell the difference between 100 and 200 here. So you're gonna have to see what the effects are, right? Like there's no way to know the answer. So let's just do it wrong to the two extremes to see what that's like first, okay? So here's the fuzziness of 0, you're gonna see there's like, it's gonna look insane on here, the amount of dancing stuff, and I'm gonna hit X. Let's turn on, let's back up. Turn on the red, hit X. There you go. So you can see this is only selecting the very brightest pixels that match that pixel that I selected. So there's a lot of noise in here. So that's not the answer. So let's back up. And we're gonna do right click, color range. A key, make sure you're on the layer that you wanna be working on. All right, let's take the fuzziness all the way up to 200. Hit Control X. And you're gonna see, now this is key, you're gonna see that it got almost all of the white and a lot of the gray, but not all the gray. Zoom in here. Do you guys see this? See it? See the purplish shade right here? Do you guys see the fuzziness around these? Now, if we were gonna move this onto a white background, it would probably work, but we would still get this shadow here, okay? If we're gonna put this on a black background though, let me just do that to show you what it's like. New layer, okay. Let's paint that layer with a black background. And put it here. All right, do you see how these lines, you can't see that this is black that's on this layer. This is black that's the background, but it's got all these gray. And that's also not what we want, all right? What we're trying to do is imagine if you could peel the ink off of the piece of paper. Imagine if you could peel all of the dark pixels off the piece of paper so that they were independent, right? It'd be kind of cool if you could do that to your sketchbook, right? Just like pick the drawing up and put it on a different drawing and leave the paper in place. That's what we're doing right now. Okay, so this is also not the thing to do. So we're gonna back up one more time because we also wanna get like the line weights. So if we only get the dark lines, that doesn't work. If we get the smudges, that doesn't work. What we wanna do is go back to the Magic Wand tool, right click, color range, and kind of mess around with the fuzziness until we've got almost everything, not quite everything, but again, it's trial and error. Control X. You can see that we've got a lot of gray, we've got a lot of black, and what we can now do is we can grab that layer and we've cut it. I've hit Control X. So I could do a new drawing and hit Control V and it's gonna paste all that information. Now, there's a problem here, right? It pasted the paper, not the ink, right? So let's back up one more time. Right click, color range, oh, hang on. Magic Wand, right click, color range, come on. Color range. Fuzziness, I'm thinking somewhere in the 120 felt good. Right click again. This is the key. Right click again, select inverse.
Instead of the white, you'll put the
So now it's gonna say, so everything that I had, Control X, I've just pulled off all of the ink, go to my new page, Control V, and here's all the ink. Now, it doesn't look like much right now, okay? But let me go back to my original drawing. Control V, let me turn on the red. Now you guys can see here that I have the two drawings, but if I grab this, right, you guys see it, like, look at that. Now there's kind of a cool thing that happens here. When I peel off all of the ink, it doesn't leave white underneath it. It literally cuts it out. So the effect that I have is that I actually have a red version of the drawing because I have that red background, and I have the black lines of the drawing, and I can move those lines independently of each other. Check this out. It's still on my clipboard, so I can paste it again. Right, so I have like multiple drawings here. Ugh, looks weird. It also means that over here in this new drawing that I have, I could like shrink it. I could put it in again, you know, larger. Copy, paste. I could make this little tiny drawing here. I can make this little tiny drawing live inside of my other drawing. Put it, like this is how people on those YouTube videos where it seems like it's an infinite zoom, this is how they make them. All right, so yeah, there's the drawing inside of the drawing, right there. It's limited by its resolution, and it's limited by how much you cleaned up the drawing to begin with. So again, here's two of my drawings. This is another sketchbook drawing, and I can, you know, put it here. And of course, then I can also edit it. So I could go over here and cut pieces of it out. You know, so I could start to make like, you guys see how like, that's a kind of funky drawing. And now I can make it 4 times more complicated by putting other pieces of drawing over top of it. Now, what this means to you is that you can take each one of your layers, peel the ink off the sheet, and put it on your master document. You can line them up with each other, and then you can turn those layers on and off in different sequences. Let's back up and just talk about how we're doing this one more time, okay? Now, there's 2 ways to do it. Both of them work. The way that I just showed you the example is that you select the white pixels, you make them fuzzy, and then you select the inverse. The other way is to select the dark pixels and pull those off. So again, right? There's 2 ways that you could cut something out, okay? You could either select the white pixels, grab all of them by using fuzziness, and then select inverse to grab everything that you had previously not selected. Or you can select the dark pixels. Remember I said every drawing is different. So when you use layers, you kind of need to tune it for every single drawing. When you use fuzziness, you need to tune it for every single drawing. Some of your drawings, it's gonna be easier to select the white space and then invert it to select the dark pixels. Some of your drawings, it's gonna be easier to select the dark pixels. I've chosen this drawing because it is equal. Either way is a good way to select it. It's going to be highly dependent on the drawing that you choose. Okay, so again, here's how we would do it if we were going to try to select it, do it selecting the dark pixels. I'm going to right click, color range, and see this eyedropper tool that shows up? I can either use the eyedropper in here, but it's much better if you use it out here. You want to select somewhere where you know you're grabbing the color that you want, either gray. Now, if I grab the gray, can you guys see how this is kind of selecting some of it? Or it's gonna be better if I select where it's really dark gray. Not totally black, not totally white, but kind of a dark gray. And hit okay. And you're gonna see that it selects the black pixels. I'm gonna cut them out. And we're gonna compare it to this drawing over here. Paste. All right, now check this out. All right, I'm gonna put these next to each other so that we can compare them, okay? Here's one drawing, and I can turn these on and off, okay? Now, do you guys see this one right here? And this line right here? That's where I selected the black pixels. This one right here is where I selected the white pixels and then did the inverse. This is called, do you guys see how it's like a bunch of bricks stacked on top of each other? We call this stair stepping or pixelation. This pixelation, it looks bad, right? It kind of, usually when we see a pixelated image, it means either it's from Minecraft or it's a low quality image. So in this scenario, I would need to select more gray pixels. I would need to increase the fuzziness in order for this to work. You don't want to bring in a drawing that's pixelated like this for 2 reasons. Number one, it looks really crappy. Number two, it reproduces even worse. Like once you lose that information, you can't get it back. Even if you use an AI algorithm, it's gonna be guessing at it. If you have the information, you wanna continue it. So the best way to take this drawing over is to grab the white pixels, make it fuzzy, and then invert it. It's kind of strange, but basically to peel the ink off the page, you want to teach the computer what is the paper, you teach it what the paper is, and then you say, okay, everything that's the paper, grab the opposite of that, okay? Sometimes it's easier to teach it what the ink is. You have to work for the scenario, but afterwards, and while you're starting out and you're trying to learn this, it's very helpful to do it both ways twice. First of all, it's good practice. There's no substitute for practice. And number two, it allows you to test which way is better and then make an informed decision, rather than being like, I don't know, maybe this works. Remember, I have a lot more experience doing this than you guys do. I'm gonna back up one more time. I'm gonna do it one more time. Magic wand tool, which is W, color range. I'm gonna zoom in over here and I'm gonna select an area that's not completely black, but it's a little bit like a dark gray, and I'm gonna make it a little more fuzzy. I'm gonna say okay. Hopefully that grabs a little bit more of the information. I'm gonna cut it out. And you're gonna see here's a problem, is that I selected the gray and it brought it along, but when I hit paste, check this out. Do you guys see how it's not bringing along the true black images? So you can see here, again, selecting the paper, the white and the light gray ones, and then telling it to select the inverse is actually way more inclusive. So it's kind of counterintuitive that to lift the lines off the paper, you actually need to select the paper and then say grab everything except that. And you get better results by doing that than saying grab the thing that I want. How do I want to put this? Food analogy. You'll have better luck. Let's say you have a bunch of M&Ms in a bowl. Rather than saying I want all the dark M&Ms and say and telling the computer grab the brown M&Ms, and then anything that seems dark, it may or may not, it's going to select the blue. It may or may not select the red and green. It's going to be a lot easier to say grab the dark M&Ms by saying grab the yellow. Okay, you've got all the yellow M&Ms. Okay, now grab everything that's not a yellow M&M. Do you guys see how that's actually less steps? Okay, that's what we're doing here. So that's what you need to do. And what we're going to do as we grab these, so I'm going to delete this layer that was not helpful. It builds confidence to do it wrong. The more you do it wrong, the more you realize the way that is the right way is the right way. So as you're working on the homework, it's gonna get a little monotonous and tedious. It's okay, it's supposed to be that way. It's a good thing. It's letting you practice what it is that you want. Okay, by the way, now that we've peeled all of this out, it makes it a ton easier to clean up. Remember how I was saying like things that are in the background make it really frustrating? So like we can cut all this stuff out, like the stuff that makes you realize that it's a piece of my sketchbook. It's super easy to clean all that stuff up, right? Jillian, this is what's the purple stuff in your drawing, right? It's actually a lot easier to cut this stuff out now. So I'm just like, all I'm doing is cutting it out and I'm just letting it wither on the clipboard. And then in an area like here where there's like lines that I want, but they're in the gray area, I can use the lasso tool and either chop it out that way, right? Which is a lot faster. Or I could use the dodge and burn tool, which is in the example video that I'm sharing with you guys to lighten this area. My dodge and burn is hiding right now. But you can use, there's a variety of different tools that you could use to kind of clean it up. Oh, here we go. So this is the dodge tool, and it's lightening all the pixels, but the gray goes away a lot faster. So you can see, so I'm cleaning that up, and now that I've cleaned that up, you see how it no longer appears, right? It looks like it's a drawing that's framed on the page instead of floating on a piece of sketchbook, right? Because I've gotten rid of that background. Now that I've cleaned this layer up, what I want to do is get rid of the layers that I don't need by deleting them. I'm going to rename this layer to Andrew's awesome sketch number 1. All right, now since all the layers that you drew line up on top of each other, and hopefully you drew those little registration marks, what we can do, it sounds like we're about to take off over here. What we can do is you can use the registration marks and you can line all of those layers up. So as you clean up the layers and put them into your master document, you can put them on top of each other.
When you add it onto master document, does it create a new layer?
Every time, check this out, every time I hit Control V, it adds a new layer.
Oh, okay.
See that?
Yeah.
Every time I hit Control V, it adds a new layer. That's why, and the default name is pretty innocuous. And you can see it's really hard to see what the subject of that layer is. So giving it a name is important, which is why when I had you guys drawing them, I had you write down what the name was on the layer itself.
Yeah.
The key here, can you see this? The key here is that we only have the lines, not the paper. The next step that we're gonna do in this studio, after we get them all in Photoshop, is I'm gonna show you guys how to digitize them into vectors using Illustrator, which then means we can take them over to CAD. Once we take them over to CAD, we can make it into, we can do 2 things. We can either trace it with nicer, sharper lines. So we could make a digital version of your hand drawing with a set of instructions. But what I really wanna do, what I really wanna do, is to take some of them. Sorry?
Is this before Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving?
We will see. We'll see. But what I really want to do is turn your hand drawings into a set of vectors that we can tell either the laser cut. As soon as we have vectors, those are instructions that the laser cutter and the CNC machine understand. Because what I would like to do is to have you guys turn your hand drawings into a set of digital instructions and then make the laser cutter basically emulate your hand and either like etch something into a piece of plastic or chipboard and like basically burn your drawing into like a piece of wood or plexiglass, or make the CNC machine route out something. Basically what we can do is make a stamp. The cool part is like if you know how to take something that is analog and turn it into digital, not by like just redoing it digitally, but actually transforming it, which is what we're doing today. Right? We've taken a drawing that I made by hand. It's from my sketchbook right here. We've turned it now into a digital file. Now we can use digital tools to make it. So we can make it more of it, we can make it faster, we can apply it to other things, we can scale it up and down. You know, we can take this drawing and put it on the side of a RAM bus right now, and it would look like somebody hand drew it still. We can't do that if we take a picture and blow it up. It'll be all pixelated. But what could be really cool, can you guys imagine sketching out your model, cleaning it up in Photoshop, moving it over into AutoCAD, and then having it get laser cut out? That's a lot faster. If you learn how to do that, it's much faster than trying to draw something that looks, again, plastic and computerized, and then laser cut it out. I had nothing against the laser cutter. It's just that the laser cutter is only as smart as you are. So the laser cutter can't put in the feeling of the space. The laser cutter doesn't know how warm the sun is on your back. Yes. But you can draw that. You guys have drawn that. You've drawn how noisy a space is. You've drawn how quiet a space is. You've drawn how humid or sticky or friendly a space is. And you figured out by drawing how to put that into your drawing. If you can then digitize that, you can teach the laser cutter how to bring that feeling across, which is pretty cool. But if you just use the computer language that the laser cutter has, then it will just make a square because you told it to make a square, and it'll make another one too, and that's very boring. And nobody wants to take that class. So, okay, so the homework for Tuesday. Why is it telling me that the NASDAQ is up? Nobody cares about that. I'm teaching class. I don't need to know that. Why is that a new thing? Anyway, the homework for Tuesday is to take every one of your layers that you had in an individual Photoshop, open that file. Don't open them all at once. Open that file. Use the magic wand tool to get used to moving it over. Bring them all into a master file. Line them up on top of each other. It's gonna start to get really messy. So when you have too many layers, turn some of them off. And this is why I said, you're like, should I just use the ones that I like? No, do all of them because you need the practice. But then you can turn them off, right? So if it starts to get like really uggo, just turn it off so you don't have to see it. Check this out, even better, you can actually change the opacity of a layer and you can just turn it down so that it's still there, but it's not as loud. Right, so that's kind of nice because it kind of keeps the information.
Oh.
So it's right up here in opacity. It's right here. It's a default, and so you're not actually like changing anything about the drawing. You can always bring it back to 100, or you can just turn it off. So that's what we're gonna work on for the next 20 minutes, and then you're gonna keep working on it. If your computer is misbehaving itself, you can do this on any of the labs, any of the computer labs that CABE has. You can do it in some of the DEC labs, but the DEC labs really are primarily for the DEC students, secondarily for other students. You can't do this in the library because even though Photoshop is on the computers in the library, those computers are really set up for typing papers and they're slow. But the CABE labs are here in Seed, upstairs in Search. If you go upstairs, all the way at the end of the hallway is one lab. In the middle of the really long hallway is another lab. There's a lab in Smith House that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. If you like quiet, Smith House is a great place to work. If you're creeped out by quiet, Smith House is a horrible place to work. A&D, down where we have class, there's a lab that's underneath the ramp. You can use it there. Or if you go up that staircase, the one that me and Sam smack our heads off of, there's a door in there. Usually it gets locked at 5 o'clock, but if there's 2 of you, you can call security and they'll unlock it. The nice thing about working in A&D is that you're very close to upper class students who you can ask to help you. And on a Tuesday and Thursday, second year is there. And on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, 4th and 5th year students are there. So you can ask them for assistance. Because as far as I know, right now, we're the only Viz 1 class that's also doing computers. I mean, I think this is still hand drawing, but I could be wrong. Okay.
Cut.
Cut.
Bye bye.